Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. On the news this hour, President Muhammadu Buhari begins his vacation in the United Kingdom. The Federal Executive Council announces that the cabinet is still intact with a valedictory service scheduled for the 22nd of May. Political scholar calls for a review of the Electoral Act as he decries the huge petitions from the just concluded 2019 elections. And it's another summons coming from the Senate to the Acting Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, on the increasing spate of violence in the country. Welcome everyone to the program. Now, as the first 4 years of President Buhari winds down gradually, the President will be holding a valedictory session of the Federal Executive Council meeting on the 22nd of May. The Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, after the Federal Executive Council meeting, says that the President's cabinet is still intact. A decision was also taken to control the nation's porous borders through electronic means. Our correspondent Gloria Mizoke reports.
The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, just back from a short break, presides over the Federal Executive Council meeting. After the meeting, which held behind closed doors, the Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed, says the President has not yet dissolved the cabinet.
The cabinet is still intact. We are going to have the valedictory service on the 22nd of May. So you still need to suffer out small.
It is on this.
The Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Abdurrahman Dambazo, also announced an e-border solution to curb cross-border crimes.
Sometime since 2012, but we picked it up and to move forward when we came in. The process is supposed to be completed within the next 2 years. It will cost about 52 billion naira. This project is going to cover 86 border posts in the country, and also we'll be able to monitor those illegal routes which we have identified as about 1,400 of them. We'll be able to monitor those illegal routes that are used for smuggling and all kinds of cross-border criminal activities.
The project, which will be solar-powered, also guarantees a 2-year training of personnel in operations.
The threats are there. They know no boundaries. Terrorism, for instance, doesn't know boundary, doesn't know border. So it's for everybody to realize that these threats are common, and we must come together to deal with them accordingly. But where this threat is big, this information is also passed, for instance, to the Air Force, to the police. They also have the capacity to respond.
The introduction of this new technology for the federal government is apt. It would not only improve customs security management of the nation's borders, but also effectively tackle cross-border crimes across the nation's over 4,000 kilometers of land border. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Well, as the Federal Executive Council continues to peddle the affairs of the country ahead of the May 29 inauguration, one of the tasks before it will be that of effectively implementing the new National Minimum Wage Act. Well, prior to the passage of the minimum wage of 30,000 naira by the President, the Nigerian Governors Forum had responded that the wage bill was a huge cost to bear on their finances. In their defense, they've asked for an upward review of the revenue allocation formula hinging the 30,000 naira minimum wage on allocation increase. And that's why we turn our attention to the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. As the acting chairman joins us from Abuja studios, Mr. Umar Gana. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
let's ask, what do you make of the 30,000 naira? Would you say that it will make a difference in the life of a worker? We had the NLC chairman who said that the minimum wage for a family of 6 amounts to about 15 naira per meal. Do you think we're on the right path?
Yes, we are on the right path in determining a minimum wage of 30,000 per month as a minimum. We are on the right track. A lot of analysis had been made to reach that kind of a figure.
States get additional resources to cater for the obligations of the minimum wage.
Well, of course, states have made a case that the revenue formula should be revised in their favor for them to enable them to pay for this minimum wage. But the position of the Revenue Commission is that both the states and the federal government require more funds. The federal government is saddled with enormous responsibilities laid on it by the exclusive functions of the Constitution, and the current increase in demand for security countrywide and infrastructure.
Your home for the news. We deeply apologize for the break in transmission, and also thank our guest who is in Abuja studios, Mr. Umar Bagana, for his patience. We lost you for a moment there, but to quickly get your thoughts on the issue, what is the perfect solution? Review the revenue formula, and when was the last review for a new formula, and how do you think states can work hard to make more money?
Well, the perfect solution is to increase revenue across the board. And we did propose that there is need to review the production sharing contracts of the petroleum industry to increase revenue to Federation account, and also to increase our joint venture production from the current 800,000 barrels a day back up to about 1.8 million barrels a day. Now, that is from the federal side, and looking at other revenue sources. For the states and LGAs, we did a conference about 2 years ago where we brought in resource persons to train states and local governments on how to increase their internally generated revenue. Most of the states commended the workshop and asked that we go down to each state and repeat the process. So far, out of all the states, only Katsina and Kebbi have so far hosted that conference in their states. So if you now increase revenue at the federal level into the Federation account through review of the oil management, and then also increase IGRs in those states where IGR is poor, then we would have a way of paying for this minimum wage without necessarily tinkering too much. Now, the revenue formula needs to be reviewed. It is desirable to review it, but to review it in a way that the states will benefit, there may be need to first look at the Constitution itself, because the Constitution has granted the federal exclusive functions, and then granted the states and the federal and the local governments concurrent functions. Now, unless you begin to shift those functions from one tier to the other, a substantial change or movement of funds from one to the other may be a bit difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but what I'm saying is difficult without first doing an constitutional amendment to realign the functions that each tier has been granted by the Constitution. 1999
It's also thrown up the discussion if Nigeria is truly a federation and how much each tier should actually be taking. But we'd like to thank you so much, Alhaji Umar Bagana, for joining us on the program.